Okay, everybody, we're going to take a look at another one of the Psalms. Today we're going to look at Psalm 118. It's Passover, so this is one of the Psalms that we chant for the section called Hallel, that we chant on Passover and other Jewish holidays. It's a beautiful Psalm. It's a little bit long. It's 29 verses. So we'll go through it. This Psalm, according to some scholars in ancient manuscripts, was actually divided into 4 or 5 different psalms. So we'll take it piece by piece. I'll read in the English, and then we'll look back and study some of the Hebrew. Again, this is Psalm 118. The psalmist begins with praise of God. Give thanks to Adonai, who is good. God's love and kindness endure forever. Let the house of Israel declare, God's love and kindness endure forever. Let the house of Aaron declare, God's love and kindness endure forever. Let those who revere Adonai declare, God's love and kindness endure forever. So this is meant to be like a song and a sing in response. And that's how it was done even in ancient times in the temple, and that's how we do it today in our services. So the chorus of that is Ki le'olam chasdo, God's chesed. The Hebrew word chesed means kindness. God's chesed, God's kindness, is forever, will always endure. And that's a really good introduction by the psalmist, because the second section, the psalmist is in distress and crying out to God. And the psalmist seems to know this foundation, Ki le'olam chasdo, God's kindness endures forever. So here's the next section. Tormented, I cried to Adonai. God answered me with expansiveness. Adonai is with me, I do not fear. What can anyone do to me? With Adonai as my help, I face my enemies. Better to depend on Adonai than on human beings. Better to depend on Adonai than on princes or people of power. If any nation surrounds me, with God's name I shall cut them down. Though they surround and encircle me, with God's name I shall cut them down. Though they swarm around me like bees, in God's name I shall cut them down. They shall be stamped down like thorns on fire. Though I be pushed and stagger, Adonai shall be my help. So like I said, here the psalmist is in a state of distress. He seems to be surrounded by tormentors, by enemies. The Hebrew for that first verse in this second section says, Min hametzar karatiya, anani bemerchavya. The metzar is literally, it's a narrow place. So the psalmist here feels trapped. He feels constricted. And in that sense of feeling anxious and trapped, the psalmist cried out to God, and God answered with expansiveness. That's a beautiful image. So you feel trapped and bound, and when you have faith in God, God answers you with freedom of movement, with expansiveness, with wide open spaces. It's really a beautiful image. So notice that metzar, that Hebrew word, is the same Hebrew root of Mitzrayim, so Egypt. So this is a great, image for us during Passover. We were constricted, we were enslaved in Egypt, and God answered our cries by giving us freedom to come into relationship with God. But in fact, Egypt is a metaphor for any situation in which you feel trapped. It's like your own personal Egypt. If you cry out to God and have faith, God will help you. God will liberate you from your prison. It's a great image. So Egypt is not just about our ancestors thousands of years ago. Egypt is about, the Middle Ages when we were struggling with the Crusades. It's about the Holocaust when we were struggling in concentration camps. It's about any situation that we have right now. It could be something as, mundane, like You might feel trapped if you're at work. Maybe you're working on some major project, and when you complete it, you finally feel free. Or something much more serious, like being an addict. When you're an addict, you're trapped. You have to have that substance or whatever it is. If you cry out to God, God will stand with you if you go and get help, and hopefully you'll be free. You'll get clean and you'll stay clean, or whatever that serious trap is. It's a very powerful image, this idea of being in the Meitzar, in this narrow place. I was thinking about Rabbi Leo Beck, who was one of the leading rabbis of Germany at the time of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. He was in Theresienstadt. He was one of only, I think, 9,000 people out of 140,000 who were there. He was one of the 9,000 who survived. Leo Beck, he taught classes to prisoners at odd times, wherever it could happen. He evaded the Nazis, obviously, who wouldn't allow that. But he taught classes in philosophy, in Jewish life, to the prisoners. And so even in the pit of hell, Leo Beck taught people that they could find a taste of freedom in studying text, in questioning, in learning, in striving for some kind of enlightenment and spirituality. So, Min ha-meitzar karatiyah, in a narrow place, you can cry out to God, and God will respond with expansiveness. Just such a glorious, beautiful image. I just love that verse. The psalmist here is in great distress. He feels surrounded by enemies. Even the image of, devorim, bees. Bees are just swarming all around. It's kind of terrifying. Thousands and thousands of bees. By the way, devorim, that's the Hebrew word for bees, and that's where the Hebrew name Devorah, Deborah, very common Hebrew name and English name, of course, comes from. Bees. Now, the psalmist triumphs over this terrible situation where he was surrounded by enemies, and here we move on to the next section of the psalm. Adonai is my strength. I sing to God who rescued me. In the tents of the righteous, voices resound with song and triumph. God's right arm is like an army. God's right arm is upraised. God's right arm is like an army. I shall not die, but I will live to tell of Adonai's deeds. Though Adonai chastened me, God did not hand me over to death. Also very powerful stuff. The first verse of this section, Adonai is my strength. The Hebrew is Ozi v'zimrat Yah vayehi li shua. God is my strength and God is my salvation. The psalmist took this verse from the Song of the Sea, the song that our ancestors sang when they left Egypt and when they were safe on the other side of the sea after the Egyptians had been drowned, when God caused the waters to crash on the enemy soldiers. So the psalmist was not there when we left Egypt, but maybe the psalmist is teaching us that any situation where you feel, threatened, where you feel like you're in that Meitzar, that narrow place, when you're rescued from that situation, when you're free from that burden, you can feel like the Israelites felt when they were liberated at the sea. It's a great, any time, it's so beautiful. Anytime you feel like you're freed from your own personal prison, you can feel as exultant as the Israelites felt when they left Egypt and they were safe from Pharaoh's clutches. I love it. It's just so powerful. Okay, let's read on. Open for me the gates of righteousness. I will enter and sing God's praises. This is the gateway to Adonai. Through it the righteous shall enter. The Hebrew here is Pitchuli Sha'arei Tzedek Avovam Va'odeya. That's the first line of that. Pitchuli, open for me, Sha'arei Tzedek. Sha'arei Tzedek are the gates of righteousness. The synagogue where I grew up as a kid was called Sha'arei Tzedek. And there are other synagogues that are named that, and it's taken, the proof text of that, it's taken from this psalm, the gates of righteousness. There is a hospital in Israel called Sha'arei Tzedek. Again, it's from this psalm, the gates of righteousness. So the psalmist is free from the threat. He is ready to enter the gates of righteousness. Walking through a portal, walking through an open gate, it gives you the sense that you're transitioning from one state to another. In this case, for the psalmist, he is leaving the threatening situation that made him so anxious and entering to rejoice and to praise God. To walk through a gate is, it's a demonstration of freedom, and in this case of simcha, of joy. This is the gate of God, of the Lord, Zesha'ar Adonai, Ladonai, sorry. The righteous will enter here, will enter through it, Tzadikim Yavo Uvo. Okay, so let's look on to the next section. I will offer thanks to you. You rescued me. You answered me, and you were my rescuer. The stone the builders rejected has become the keystone. This is Adonai's doing. How wondrous it is in our sight. This is the day that God made. Let us rejoice and be glad. I'll stop there. Just the Hebrew of the second verse of this section, Even ma'asu habonim hayta larosh pinah, I can honestly say is one of my favorite verses of the entire Tanakh, the entire Bible. The stone that the builders rejected, it was just a nothing. It looked like it wouldn't be so important, so they set it aside. It wouldn't be a part of the foundation of the building. It rose up in prominence and became the keystone. A keystone of any building or an arch is the stone that's right in the middle that holds the whole arch, the whole structure together. So this is the story of Israel. We were just a little nothing. We were a ragtag group of slaves, and we became, God's chosen people. We became a glorious people in relationship with God and with the Torah. You can expand on this idea as a metaphor. This is the story of America. We were downtrodden. We were subjects of England. Somehow we managed to overcome the British in the Revolutionary War. It was actually miraculous. So much so that Benjamin Franklin suggested that the crest of the United States should be the image of the Israelites safe on the other side of the sea, with Pharaoh and his soldiers drowned in the sea, an image of freedom against tyranny. So to me, this is, also pop cultural references. I mean, this is Rocky Balboa, the guy, the boxer who shouldn't have had a chance against Apollo Creed, but he fought him to a draw, went the entire 15 rounds. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, Rocky 1. Not the others as much as Rocky 1. You got to see Rocky 1. To me, it's a reference to the Bad News Bears, one of my favorite movies. It's a little old, from the 1970s, but again, a baseball team, Little League team should have had no chance whatsoever, and somehow they won the championship. So I highly recommend both those movies, by the way, Rocky 1 and the Bad News Bears. And that's this. That's Even ma'asu habonim hayta larosh pinah. Such a beautiful verse. Okay, so we're coming close to the end of the psalm. Now the psalmist just literally cries out. It's just so powerful. He just cries out in the midst of all of this roller coaster ride of, struggle and anxiety and fear to being triumphant, now he cries out, Adonai, we implore you, deliver us. And he repeats that. Adonai, we implore you, deliver us. Adonai, we implore you, grant us success. And he repeats that as well. So just the strong desire, please help us and help us to be successful in life, however you define success, whether it's material success, emotional success, finding love and family, friendship. That's what we're asking God. Help us with this. The psalmist ends with other verses of praise. Blessed are you who come in the name of Adonai. May the blessings of the house of Adonai be upon you. Adonai is our God, lighting our path. You are my God, and I offer thanks to you. My God, I exalt you. Give thanks to Adonai, who is good. God's love and kindness endures forever. Now, I hope that last verse sounds familiar to you because it's a repetition of the very first verse of this psalm, Psalm 118. So the psalmist, with his beautiful, he just wraps it up and puts a bow on the package for you. He began with the idea of God's kindness that will endure forever. And even, again, through this roller coaster ride of anxiety and fear to triumph, even if there's more anxiety and fear after the triumph, ki la'olam chasto, God's chesed, God's kindness endures forever. That will always be with you, no matter what the ups and downs are in life, no matter what virus we're suffering from, no matter if, God forbid, there is a loss in your life, a job loss, a loss of a loved one. Ki la'olam chasto, God's chesed will always be there. And that's why the psalmist ends with that. It's like an exclamation point. Never fear. God's kindness will be with you always if you're open to that possibility. Just fabulous. I just love this psalm. Again, this was Psalm 118. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to chant it as a part of the Hallel service to end Passover. So I hope you'll sing it with some gusto. Psalm 118. Thanks, everybody.